Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mecky.
Who's actually got his mic on. Awesome. We are broadcasting live from the Sydney studios in freedomslips.com. You can go there. Join us in the chat room too. Don't forget. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Get our show notes and all the links we placed into the chat during the show. And you can get those at shinysideout.net. But you know what? You should get connected to Revolution Radio any way you can, because it's on air, online, and on your smart device. If you live in Kentucky, you can tune in on FM, find WZZR 101.3. Or you can use an app. If you know what an app is, then I'm going to read a list of them. Choose the one you like, or you can just put in freedomslips.com into one of your app search providers, your favorite one. Okay, you ready? TuneIn.com, Web Radio Central, Receiver mobile app, Freedom Slips mobile. That's the one that Nighthawk made. TalkStream Live, StreamFinder.com, Internet-Radio.com, Radio Tuner, Radio Ways, RadioOnline.co. Now, this is what I found when I did a search. What will you find? And of course, our own Shiny Side Out app, which is actually pretty cool because it's not only got a Facebook link to us so you can see what we post, it's got a Twitter link, and it's got all our videos and all of our history on there as well. But you know, it's not the best place to get your history from. If you want to get to the archives, jump into the Freedom Slips archives. It only costs you $5 a month, and you've got access to all of the hosts' shows on there, all the history, because you know what? There's more than just us. There's more than just Shiny Side Out on there. And freedomslips.com is an awesome central hub for all of your information needs. Check the bottom of the homepage for all the links. You know what? Don't just do that. Get yourself a CD of your favorite hosts' shows in the 2014 or 2015 season for only $34.95 US. Or if you live outside the US, it'll be around about $39.95 US. And all the information is available from the website. But you know what? You can do more than that too. You could donate money. It's listener-funded radio. You need to donate money. But you can donate money and receive something in return. Not just an awesome radio station. And that's a 75,000 seed pack, but check your customs regulations in case you get it, and you know, to avoid disappointment, do that. Or you can get a USB stick filled with survival documents. And it's even an EMP proof one. Good luck, you'll have to have your laptop in a metal garbage can, a trash can, during the EMP to be able to plug it into something. But there you go, you're learning as you go. All right, if you're in the US, you can call in on 347-688-2902. Or if you have Skype, you can add the word Freedom Screen. It's all one word. But you know what? If you didn't catch it, Solaris had yet again, this is the 222nd time I've said this. And that is, she had a great show. Today she had Jerry Avalos on, and they were talking about covert technologies and free energy, and I listened to half of it, not all of it, but half of it, because I've been clearing the big room for some house renovations. We pulled some money out of the loan to get some renos done, and boy oh boy, it's like moving. I promised myself I'd never move again, and it's just terrible. No wonder I didn't want to move, because I've had to empty the great room, as you'd call it in the US, which is the kitchen, dining, and lounge room, and all the other areas, up and down on the deck, downstairs, garage, you name it. and it's just been non-stop. But I'm going to tell you, Mackie, just right before I jump to you, okay? Now, there's something. I've been talking to one of my friends, and last night one of the fans of the show called me up because I'll take calls, and he was talking about one of the really heavy news stories that came out this week, which was the Zika virus and Rio Olympics. And in our news over here, we're getting pretty much bombarded by Australian experts talking about this is the greatest threat to the world, and the 2016 Rio Olympics poses the most unimaginable risk of spreading Zika virus all over the planet, with something like 1.5 million people due to visit there. 150 international doctors, scientists and researchers. They wrote an open letter to the WHO calling for the games to be moved or delayed due to this virus. And I was talking to one of my friends about this, and he said, how come it's just suddenly popped up? I said, well, there's a complete coincidence, or is it, of the Bill Gates Foundation that approved the funding of the genetically modified mosquitoes to counter the dengue virus. But it was Bill Gates who bought 500,000 shares in Monsanto. Can you believe that, Mackie? That's how much he bought, and he funded the genetically modification of the mosquitoes to be released, and there's more than 1 million a month being released in Brazil and in Rio. Can you believe that, right? But it's funny. So is it having an effect against dengue? Well, I don't know. There's not many people alive to tell you, because at exactly the same time as that program started to release was the beginning of the Zika virus. Now, this outbreak that's now gone crazy. Of course, it's an not well-known virus. There isn't much in the media. Yes, this isn't the first time that it's been out, I agree. But when you have a listen to this is a quick clip from Bill Gates. Okay, you ready?
Billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an...
He just said, by using vaccines and family planning, they could reduce the world's population by 10 to 15%. You what? But wouldn't vaccines increase the population because of the loss, the lack of death due to viruses? Not so much, according to Bill Gates. All right, so I just wanted to put that out there, that he fast-tracked the development and the deployment of this in a pretty heavily populated area that now has suddenly, I think it was planned, has an Olympic Games with people coming from all around the world. You know what? This is almost as frightening as the ozone hole was during the Australian Olympics, Mackie.
Completely agree. See, the issue, and how's my sound, by the way?
Your sound is fantastic.
Today's show brought to you by the Blue Yeti microphone series.
We both have one now.
Yeah, that's right. Both Dave and I are listening. Mine feels like a cast iron thing. I think it's cast iron, but that's all good. It's a proper broadcast grade microphone. Look, you're right. There is clearly an agenda going on. It's not as hidden as people might think. People have been worrying about overpopulation for a long time. And let's be very clear. We need to be very clear. The population control agenda has been on the White House's, and especially, I'm talking about specifically the White House in the States, agenda for 50 or 60 years. Population reduction, population control, same thing really. Well, how can you say that, Mackie? Well, I say it because there have been overt, and not covert, but overt attempts made to spread birth control around the world. Pills or prophylactics. So it doesn't really matter. But America has been on the forefront of this birth control program. China clearly as well. But America is helping everybody else with that. And sometimes foreign aid is contingent upon implementing this, which is interesting because that goes directly against what the Catholic Church is preaching. In fact, it is a sin to use any form of birth control if you're Catholic, and that's why we have such nice outbreaks of AIDS and other venereal diseases across Africa, right? So it's actually a completely unsustainable position by the Catholic Church. But having said all that, it is not surprising. This is not a secret, guys. No one has ever thought it was a secret. What seems to be happening, though, to an increasing or at an increasing rate, is the proliferation of helpful medicines, things that make you infertile, things that cut the birth rate right down. Zika virus itself, you say, well, how would that affect the birth rate? Well, you have to understand what the Zika virus does. It's not going to kill you. The Zika virus is going to make you sick. Okay, it's just like the normal flu. You get a fever, not even that bad. And for us as men don't really get affected much. Nothing much happens. If you are pregnant, chances are that your child will suffer from something which is called microencephaly. Microencephaly is an abnormally small skull. That's what the Zika virus causes. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. Won't kill the child either, but will leave it disabled. So, what do you do if you find out you get Zika and you find out that your child suffers from this? Well, the first thing that doctors will suggest is an abortion. You can be on any side of that argument, but the point is that's what the first thing that's being suggested. It will also potentially make people less likely to want to fall pregnant if they are in fact infected with the Zika virus, because there's a chance that the child will be handicapped, right? So it's a roundabout way of doing it, but the thing is this has been going on for a long time. The Zika virus is not new. You have to understand this. It's not a new virus. It's been around for decades, right? The only reason it is now coming to the forefront is because Brazil is about to host the Olympics, as Dave has said. Oh, it's hosting Olympics. That's good. Well, yeah, it's good for Brazil. It's not so good for the rest of us, because the virus thrives anywhere mosquitoes can live. And clearly, there's a massive issue around the equatorial belt, so subtropical or tropical regions of the world, equatorial regions of the world. If you move up into the Nordics or even down, into the south toward the Arctic or Antarctic regions, rather, so Antarctic and the north, the Arctic regions, and then you're relatively safe from mosquitoes. Not completely, but relatively. So that's, and believe it or not, within the subtropical and tropical bands, that's where the vast majority of the population is concentrated. In fact, in India and in China, that's where, in Asia in general, that's where a lot of people live, where it's really hot and where there are lots of mosquitoes. So once these mosquitoes spread across the planet and spread the Zika virus, there will be a lot of births affected, and a lot of people potentially are reluctant to have children, or in fact have a generation of handicapped kids, not quite as maybe not as bright or as able as all of us. So it's when I say it's a roundabout way of population control, that's what I mean. It's not direct. It's not going to make you infertile, right? It's not going to kill your child or whatever. None of that. It just severely handicaps it. So is it sinister? Maybe. And Dave is right in pointing out that Mr. Gates, in fact, Mr. Gates has been on this population control agenda right from the start. You look at the the fund that he supports together with his wife. The foundation that's actually for India specifically. That's right down that lane. That's right down the track of population control, guys. That's what they want to do. Is it a bad thing? This is where it gets interesting, Dave. If you are a rational human being, you know that we shouldn't breed like crazy, right? We know that. But on the other hand, you have human rights. The right to procreate is probably the most fundamental thing that everybody is allowed to do. There's no license. You don't have to have a license to have a child. No one, no one even attests if you're fit to be a parent.
There should be an exam, but that's something else.
Well, I think there should be. You're right. I mean, you go fishing, you need a license, right? You want to have an animal, a pet, you need a license. You want to drive a car, you need a license, right? So everything that you do in life, you probably require some kind of training and a license for. The most important thing, which is having children, no, not required. It's all good. Just go ahead and do whatever you need.
Knock yourself out.
It's a really difficult question. Yeah, right. It's a really difficult question because you have to consider the whole picture. Now, clearly, it's on an individual basis, it's horrendous, right? To contemplate, telling someone, no, you can't have a child, you can't have a child, or whatever. But if you talk about billions of us all having children, uncontrolled, then it becomes a very different discussion. So I can't completely condemn those people. It's just the methods that I have a problem with. That they, Anyway.
Yeah, Mekki, let me just interject for a minute. Okay, so we know that it's the Egypti version of the mosquito. And yes, it's found in a lot of places. It's all good. The dengue fever thing, the intentions were good. Just like, I don't know, cane toads, and just like foxes and rabbits in Australia. There's so many examples that I could give you where good intentions failed miserably. Now, whether it was intentional or it's unintentional, or it just happens to be a complete coincidence, it's sort of a little bit out there. I think that an intelligent person looking at it would see that it's more than a coincidence. And Mekki, this is the other point I brought up with my friend that the show is one of the big fans of the show, and that is that you see pictures of them spraying everywhere. They've got trucks driving down the street spraying to kill anything, any kind of insect. Now, I was talking to an entomologist who says that the spraying in that manner will kill everything. Pollinators, the good insects, the bad insects, not just the ones. There's no targeting of mosquitoes. Yeah, it kills everything. So it's also killing the genetically modified mosquitoes as well as any other mosquitoes. It's killing all of them. And whichever one wins the breeding war is the one that comes back to a head really quickly. Okay, now mosquitoes, I just have to tell everyone, the mosquito has a detector in it, a sensor array, that can tell the enzyme in the water if frogs are present and will lay its eggs in a different water pond. Did you know that? It's something really interesting. So that it's aware, it's able to...
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's able to tell whether frogs are present in the water because of some excretion on the skin of the frog, which the frog doesn't know it's doing. We can't tell as humans, but the mosquito is able to do it, and it'll prefer a different water source. Okay, so that's number one.
Wow.
It kills everything. Number two, that it's not, it's not targetable. The other thing is that the authorities are now advising everyone, look, it's okay, just go and enjoy it. Enjoy the Olympics. It's going to be fine. We're not going to move it. And, just to have mosquito repellent. Well, I don't know about you, but certainly in Australia, you can have as much mosquito repellent as you like, and you will still get bitten. Yep. All right.
So it's like saying just make sure you wear your crash helmet when the nuclear device is going off. Make sure the goggles are on. The safety goggles are important, and the crash helmet. Yes, that's right. You did that.
Real acid.
Yeah, what?
The goggles they do nothing. Okay, so, but this is the big point here is they're saying it's safe. Don't worry. The city will be clean. It'll be fine. They're making a concerted effort to spray and to make sure there's no open water sources for breeding of mosquitoes. Well, that's good. But did you know a mosquito can travel in its between 5 and 7 days of life? It can travel 30 kilometers.
Yep.
It's not like there's the upturned pot collecting rainwater and being a breeding site, and you're next door. It doesn't matter. 30 kilometers is a lot. So, and that's it's wind assisted, but it doesn't mean you've got to be down by the river. And it doesn't mean that you've got to be near any open water source. Remember, bleachers, seats, and shade. Underneath those in shade is where the mosquitoes are going to prefer to sit, waiting for the cool of the afternoon for them to come out, because they become dehydrated rather quickly. So I'm trying to get into the head of the mosquito, right? So their entire intention is to stay hidden from dehydration and then to come out and have a meal. And it's just unfortunate that we're going to have the world's population in the same place as this mosquito-borne virus. I think it's nuts. I think anyone who says that it's okay is on the side of the people saying, let's just go and, let's spread this around the world. Remember how absurd it was, Mekki, when we had Ebola being flown to the US?
Yeah, there was a worry. In fact, I was surprised when that did happen, because the thing is this: accidents will happen. You can't really control a viral or bacterial agent. It's not going to happen. It's completely beyond your control, because something will go wrong. And
it did.
I would say, and it did, absolutely, and it did, because people got infected, right? I mean, they contained it, but we don't know if we know the whole story in that one either, right? So look, there are a number of worrying things around this, right? There really are. And my brother just made me aware that, just to an earlier point, that Pakistan has now outlawed or forbidden any prophylactic advertisements. So you can no longer. I guess if you're fundamentalist Muslim and a fundamentalist Catholic, then you're on the same page. Maybe those guys should get together. But Dave, unless you wanted to talk more about the Zika virus,
no,
really worrying news story to share with everybody.
Well, go ahead, man. What is it?
What we've seen is, and this is a late breaking story. It's a couple days old. And the US has now seen the first case of bacteria that are resistant to last resort antibiotics. Oh. So we no longer, yeah, exactly, right? So in fact, we now have got bacteria that are resistant to all antibiotics we have, even the last resort antibiotic. Okay.
Wasn't that called Tamil or something?
Yeah, that's right. Let me just see.
That was the last resort antibiotic, and that was ready for a pandemic. So, yeah, Mekki, do you have a link? Can you paste that into the chat room?
I'm doing that now, yeah. So essentially, what that means is, okay, here comes the link, guys. It'll be part of our show notes as well, but here we go. It's an official news story. It's part of the mainstream media, but it hasn't really been given a lot of attention, okay? So what we are now seeing is, this is what the director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has to say, Thomas Frieden. We risk being in a post-antibiotic world, okay? Post-antibiotic world. And he was speaking at the National Press Club luncheon in Washington, D.C. He said the bacteria was resistant to colistin, which is the last resort, right? An antibiotic that is reserved for use against nightmare bacteria, his words. Okay, his words. Yeah, it is not good. Now, apparently in the United States, antibiotic resistance has been blamed for at least 2 million illnesses and about 23,000 deaths annually. Now, that is referring to a whole range of antibiotic resistance. If you have more bacteria that are resistant to, like this one, to all the antibiotics, then that number is probably going to dramatically increase globally as well, right? Now, the problem here also is that there's a certain gene found here. It's called the MCR1 gene, and it was found last year in people and in pigs. Okay, so therefore the potential for the superbug to spread from animals to people is a major concern.
Huh.
Okay, so it jumps species. Okay, and we know that with the flu clearly there's some issues, but now with this antibiotic resistant bacterium, in fact completely resistant antibacterium, bacterium, that's really a huge issue now. And the reason I think it hasn't really played that well, because this is an end time scenario. If you have a bacterium out there in the world, because antibiotics only work on bacteria. If you get a virus, it runs its course, right? You get a viral infection, it'll go away by itself, hopefully. And bacterial infection is something else altogether. And unless you treat it with antibiotics, chances are that while you may not die necessarily, you will certainly have some long-term repercussions and effects from that. So, but if we find bacteria that are in fact now antibiotic resistant, well, what do we do? Well, the answer is not a lot. We'll just die. Okay, if it happens to be like a bad bacterium that can kill you, or we'll just get really sick.
Well, tuberculosis, Mackie, there's now the antibiotics resistant strain. We have no protection against it.
Nope.
And that's
Zero.
only in New Guinea.
That is correct. In fact, there's a hospital there that's run on the island. You can actually see Australia from the island. It's part of Papua New Guinea, and Australia funds that hospital, and it's now looking to withdraw funding from it. But essentially, in that particular hospital, the tuberculosis cases that are resistant to any treatment. So if you get tuberculosis, which is a lung disease, and you can treat it, great, you can recover. There will be some scarring of your lung tissue, but you can survive. If you cannot treat it, you will die, and you will die fairly quickly. Unfortunately, though, you will spread it, and while it's not truly airborne, it is spread through saliva, so the coughing and the hacking off, spitting of blood, bodily fluids, all that stuff. You can spread tuberculosis fairly effectively, especially in the world we live in today. Think about the crowded commuter situations, planes, airports, inner cities, all of that stuff, which is really ideal for bacteria and viruses, in fact, to propagate. So this is a problem. And astonished it hasn't got more airtime. Well, not really astonished, but I wish it was going to get more airtime. And I think the imminent divorce that Johnny Depp is going through had got more airplay than this story, right? But what can you do? People are mostly not. Our listenership, of course, excluded. So this was really the alarming story that I had for you guys, and just keep this one watching. Keep watching that one.
Well, look, I just wanted a follow-up from the story last week about the sea level rise climate scientist who was sacked. There was actually 360 scientists who were all given the boot. And they're all climate scientists. Now, I heard a story today that I think that, when I was listening to it, I thought, Mackie, I've got to remember this one because it's really important, I think. And this was the interviewer was asking the climate scientists, and they did a secret recording too, by the way, which they put to air, which I was surprised that they did that. But it was that the question was asked, well, did you find out what was going on with the climate? And he said, yes. Well, what are we supposed to do about it? And he goes, we don't know. We don't know what the fix is. He didn't say what it was. He didn't say carbon. He said, yes, we found out what was going on. And he said, I'm surprised that we'd be all let go because whatever is put in place to try and mitigate the problem of climate change, then wouldn't you want to measure the results? And that's the question that he asked. That was the scientist asking the question back to the interviewer. Well, wouldn't you want to know? I'm sure you'd like to know how successful your mitigation was. Oh, doesn't seem to be an issue. So what is it that was causing climate change? Is it changeable? Can we do anything about it? Maybe there isn't anything we can do about it at all. Maybe it's an external source, Mackie, and it's not carbon.
You're right. You're right, and we discussed this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And look, just to say this, climate change is something that happens all the time on this planet. We know it's happened all the time in the past because there have been ice ages, which are a significantly different climate from today. Okay, so we're living in a relatively anomalous warm period right now. Okay, but just to Dave's point, so let's say the 200 odd people were made, I don't know, redundant, they would just let go, whatever. You have to ask yourself why that is. And the answer is usually because they could be uncovering something that they shouldn't. or they could be spilling the beans on something that they should not, if we just let them do their job, right? So we can't really kill them all. That's just too many. Like microbiologists aren't that many. We're going to kill a few, that's fine. But 200 odd climate scientists, yeah, that's going to raise some hackles. Now, what could they uncover? I don't know. But the point is that somebody clearly is not stopping the research or stopping whatever work or has an agenda. I'm always reminded of things, when they take a critical turn. Anti-gravity. All the rage in the 1950s. Not a peep since then. Not a peep. Nothing. Zero. The moon. All the rage in the 60s and even early 70s. Since then, not a peep. Nothing. Zero. Okay, nobody wants to go there or didn't want to go there for decades, right? And anti-gravity we hear nothing about anymore. There are other things like that. Certainly a lot of the Tesla research is treated in the same fashion. People are being discouraged from investigating or researching certain areas, working in certain areas. And now you've got 200 climate scientists working on climate, which is exactly what they should do. You can't just discourage them to work now on, I don't know, trees or the rock formations in the taiga. No. So what you do, you just get rid of them. You might maintain a skeleton staff, but guess what? The workload will be so much, they'll be completely inundated with just the day-to-day operation of whatever they're doing. So further research or even inquiries will not be necessarily possible because they're short-staffed. So it's an elegant way of killing off certain areas of research. You simply get rid of the researchers, right? You can kill them or you make them or you lay them off, as the case may be. So Dave, I think there is something to it here. I think there's something happening that that some people don't want other people to know about, the vast majority of us, right? And I think by laying off 200,
360.
and I don't know how many, 300. And I don't know how many climate scientists there are in the world, right? I don't think there are that many. I mean, I don't think it's a growth industry, but the thing is this, you take that many out, I think you can curb the research a lot, especially if these were let go from like public institutions or even, government-funded institutions.
It was CSIRO.
Bingo, right. Oh, well, there you go, right? And this is really the kicker. So what is causing it? So let's just spend a couple of moments on that, Dave. Anything that is big enough to affect climate is usually outside the Earth, like the sun, for example, right? The sun, everybody will agree, the sun has got enough energy to affect climate, yes. Now everybody says, well, no, we human beings with our carbon output and, blah, 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 we can do it as well. Well, maybe we can. I don't know. We certainly have put enough carbon in the atmosphere, but is it enough to affect this climate change? Maybe. But what else could there be, Dave? I mean, there could be a number of outside influences, right?
Yeah, so thinking about this, just imagine for a minute that the heat was coming from, say, gravitational waves, because there was a recent announcement about that. And as soon as that announcement came out, well, let's just get rid of the climate scientists. We don't need them anymore. Doesn't that sound a really bit odd? That, on a timeline that happens to be what occurs, You know
what it reminds me of? And I'm sorry to bring up another Simpsons reference. I'm sure they're going to sue us eventually.
Who? Simpsons.
Who knows? There's a comet coming towards Springfield, right?
That's right.
And it hits or doesn't hit. I can't remember. It's beside the point. What they do, though, is after the crisis is over, to the observatory, let's burn it down so this will never happen again.
That's right. They only got worried because they looked at it. That's right. It was hilarious.
That's right.
So there's been discussions, and I've only heard third hand or fourth hand about it, but that was corroborating the climate on all the planets in the solar system is increasing, not just ours, and that the only way that could occur is either the sun is doing something, or gravitational waves seems to be making the sun do it. And because we've discovered them recently, and there's an uptick, we know there's an uptick in space and dirty space. We just, honestly, we're driving blind. We have no clue. But the people that seem to be putting this together and adding it up are telling us, maybe it's the galactic center, or maybe it was a nearby star that supernovaed, and we've got, the remnants of its gravitational field affecting all the planets. Maybe, and this is still more maybes, maybe it's the Earth's core that's increasing in size. changing because of this gravitational waves or something. Look, I don't know the answer. I wish I did. But, keep your ear to the ground and try and understand more about what's going on. Certainly the government is completely convinced that it knows everything it needs to ever know ever about climate and has closed the book. That's what they've done.
Yeah.
That's basically what they've done. They've stopped reading. They don't want any more input. They've unplugged the stereo.
I think, you're right. I think more so what they've done is they have decided that we, the public, knows everything it ever needs to know about that. Right? So you guys over there, in the bleachers and the cheap standing seats, well, they're not really seats. It's only standing room. You've known enough now. You know enough. You just go home now. Nothing to see here. Everybody else in the balcony seats, you stay a little while longer. We got something else to tell you. So,
there's a point.
Right?
Yeah.
The vast majority of us are now no longer in need of knowing this. And this is interesting because if there were, I'm not saying it is, but if there were a comet hurtling towards the Earth, destroying it in the next week or month, the government would not tell you a thing. And essentially, because one, any public unrest might interfere with any plans they had to save whomever, right? There's that. And secondly, what good would it do? They would probably say. Let's run it out. Let's just run it out. I mean, when the comet is a couple hours away, people will know anyway. And there's
a couple of hours away, they'll know. Yeah,
right. Exactly. Right.
Exactly.
So they'll have enough time to make peace with their respective deities and whatever, But until then, let's just run as it is, because I think society would deteriorate in a matter of hours if people found out that the world is going to end on October 31st, 2017. Oh, really? Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So chances are that they wouldn't tell us without any, I guess, sinister planning. However, I think there is sinister planning afoot, and I think it's a lot longer range than that. I don't think that the world is going to end tomorrow. I don't think climate change is going to be the end of us. I think there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going to happen, right? And it's sort of like the Matrix resetting in some ways. Okay, so.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Look at the hypothesis, guys. Look at the hypothesis. Just do that.
and look really quickly on that, on the reset and what the possible outcomes are. Meki's right. The government wouldn't want to tell us, even if it affected us directly. However, I made a note of looking at, and you could do the same thing. You could just Google photos of Sydney Harbour. Google photos of Sydney Harbour and have a look at the sandstone block walls on all of the piers, because they're built like 3 or 4 meters tall, and you had to walk downstairs down to where you could then get on your boat. And the same thing at the Australian Opera House, the Sydney Opera House. The lower step now is no longer ever exposed to air. It's always now permanently underwater. But around the Gosford foreshore, I'm going to tell you that there's a single block now, Meki, of less than a foot before it's inundated.
Yep.
Okay, 1 foot, 30 centimeters. And before, I remember when I moved here, there was at least one entire row of stone that was always in air. Even high tide didn't make any difference. But now at high tide, it's inundated that next stone up, and it's only got 30 centimeters or 12 inches left before it's going to go over the top of that and flood all the parklands. Now, this, you must understand that if you're coastal and on a beach, the beach is dynamic, and you will not see this evidence. It's only where it's been something man-made put there and you can measure it against it, because sand goes up and down, sand moves up and down the beaches. It's natural and you really won't notice it. But compare it to something that's 100 years old. So the first photo of Sydney Harbour, and look where whatever mark that tide was at, you can see the tide range. You look at it now and it's way underwater, those original ones. And that's what I did. I did a study of that and found that it's gone up by heaps and heaps. In fact, if it goes on another 5 years without inundating over the top, I'd be completely surprised. All of our infrastructure is in the bottom 2 meters above sea level. Our airport above sea level is only 2 meters above sea level. The rail to get to my house is only about that 1 foot mark above sea level. The rail. Think about that's electrical. Right? All of our sewer plants, all our freshwater treatment plants are all at the lowest point, which is just above sea level. It's extraordinary what we will lose at 2 meters sea level rise.
But this is really indicative of any civilization and any culture in the world.
Live by the water.
Always. Rivers, lakes, by the seaside, because transport over water is easier than over land, right? It simply is. And it's a natural thoroughfare, if you will, right? It's a natural way to transport and just travel. So, and think about that for a second here, right? So this is our civilization today. And I think the vast majority of the population also is living on or around sea level, or a couple of meters within the sea level on the planet. What does it mean? If there were an inundation, if there were a rise, a catastrophic rise, we would lose a lot of what makes our civilization our civilization. It just would disappear, right? I mean, people would have time to move things, sure enough. I mean, if it's catastrophic, they wouldn't, but, if it's slow enough, they would. Like, for example, we are evacuating some of the South Pacific islands, which are about to disappear because of this. However, the problem here is that we don't really take it into consideration when we look consideration when we look back. When we look back, we only dig in places that are accessible today, because it's easier, obviously, right? But we don't dig where we should dig. Submerged areas. Lake bottoms.
It's very difficult to dig. It's very difficult to dig in the old lakeside. Because, I lost a whole bunch of archaeologists that way.
But see, that's the
they all drowned.
Unless we do that, we will not learn anything about the past. We have to look at today, and this is really what the show is about as well. You look at everything. Look at today, look what's happening, and then apply that to the future, yes, but also apply it to the past. You want to know what happened? Look in the right places.
If you look
in the right places.
Meki's right. If you look at Google Maps, for instance, and look at the Earth, Google Earth or Google Maps, look at the ocean off the west coast of California, and you will see rivers that were cut into mountains that flowed all the way to the sea bottom. Now, that could have only have happened when there was little to no sea.
Yes.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You can see it. It's not just the silt. It's not just cut the silt. It's actually cut into the mountains, which used to be the same as what you see now, like Mount Baldy and everything in SoCal, Southern California. But that same mountain range extends into the ocean and is beneath the sea at the moment, and you can see its rivers cut down into the bottom of the ocean. I mean, there's an extraordinary distance there. We know that Easter Island was once much bigger, and that they used to live down next to the ocean. So at the moment, I mean, that's beneath the sea. You'd have to dig there.
And this is really the key thing. Like, we know the Mediterranean was dry at one point in the past, right? Because the only major input into the Mediterranean is the Straits of Gibraltar, right? That's where the most of the water comes in. But let's say you close up the Straits of Gibraltar, which they have been in the past, geological past, and the Mediterranean was dry. I'll give you a simple example there, right? But other places like that Dave just mentioned as well. So what that means, though, and just to be very clear, is that these catastrophic changes have happened in the past. We know they have happened in the past. We just have to look at the face of the planet. It doesn't lie. It tells you, right? We even know that Mars had a catastrophic tsunami type event, like a flood. We know this, because we found the evidence on the face of Mars. We found the evidence for our catastrophic tsunami flooding as well. It's still there. And we know that parts of the United States used to be submerged. The Badlands, where in every Western you see it, when they've got these rocks sticking out, it's all red, and there's their really tabletop mountains.
Mesas.
That used to be, they used to be bottom. That used to be the bottom of the sea, the ocean. Right. So the land has traded places with the sea, and it has happened in the past. It'll happen again, right? But we don't want to know that, I guess, because we believe in the steady state theory of everything.
Oh, we want to live in a
Everything happens
postcard,
really
Mickey.
slowly, right? Yeah, it's stupid. And we know that catastrophism is the only viable explanation for the Earth changes that we have. We just look at the planet. Look at it, really, right?
Don't pop,
guys.
Mackie. You're doing fine. This was the point that I made with my friend, the show fan, and he's really a great person to bounce stuff off, and this catastrophism that we believe so heavily in, and there is a steady state that occurs between, and a gradual change that occurs between, but there are also super major events that occur, and they occur whenever they want to occur, whenever there is the need for that to occur, whether an impact, gravitational wave, whatever it is, and they have a cause and they have an effect, and the effect can change the landscape so significantly you wouldn't recognize it again. Thinking about the amount of pressure, for instance, that India pushes up the Himalayas. Think about this, Mekki. Could you imagine if that impact that was 12,500 years ago in the southern Indian Ocean was so significant that it caused that mountain range to rise up?
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
We know that Texas has seashells that aren't fossilized in the soil in Texas. It's quite a ways from the ocean. So it was underwater at one point. There are,
right.
and we know that there's a not even a petrified forest, but a forest that's is silted up, but it's now under the Gulf waters in the US, and the changes are happening all over the place. You know what? I wish it was the same as in the 80s. I really do. I liked the postcards then. That was a nice time. If only, and some people might reminisce about the 50s being the time of the greatest peace on the planet. Why couldn't it just be like that? Why couldn't we have a Groundhog Day just like one of those years? We can't. And we shouldn't try and fight it. It is changing. It's always going to change. All we can do is try and keep it on the straight and narrow.
Oh, absolutely. And look, all the talk, it's actually a red herring if you think about it. Like a lot of the things we bring to you, a lot of the things that people worry about are red herrings. And what do I mean by that? They're meant to distract you from the actual issues at hand. Okay, so what really matters in life? What is really important? I mean, the most obvious red herrings are clearly, the lives of celebrities and things like that. But other red herrings are like climate change. I mean, it's stupid to argue about climate change, right? Because we know it has happened in the past, and we know it's going to happen in the future, and we know it's happening right now. Okay, and even if it isn't happening right now, it will happen eventually. Okay, and the weather is going to change. Yeah, which weather is really is a single instance of the climate. The climate is over time and across the entire planet. Weather is a localized phenomenon. And these things change over time, right? But we spend a lot of time and effort discussing it, debating it, creating cottage industries. Right? Yeah, that's right. Carbon trading. Wow, what a great scam! What a fantastic scam that is. Carbon trading. So I can produce garbage or pollution at a certain rate if I buy credits from you, because you're a small country and you should be like I'm producing, let's say, 1,000 units of garbage or pollution, right? And you're a small country, you only produce 10. So let's say, therefore the world decides you should really be producing 500 units of pollution. Think about that, right?
But we've got 10,000 units to sell. We're not using them all up. Hey, Mekki,
exactly.
do you want to buy 1,000 units off me?
Absolutely.
Oh, cool.
Because I'm a polluter. It is actually insane. Because instead of saying, yes, little country, well done for not polluting so much, we're saying, you know what? You don't pollute enough. Therefore, we're going to give you credit, which you can now sell to other countries that pollute too much.
And guess what Mekki gets to do? He gets to continue to pollute at the same rate.
Yeah.
Well done,
absolutely.
you, Mekki. Well done.
Woo-hoo.
I know. In fact, if his company's big enough, he can buy the little country.
Yeah. the system works. That's all I can say here. The system really works.
Yeah, that's what it does.
So there's that. This is a red herring. Another red herring is the assassination of JFK. Who cares? I know I'm getting a lot of hate mail for that, and I do care as well. But
He
the
does
point
get
is,
hate mail,
who really care? No one. In the scheme of
I
things,
get
it
it
doesn't
too.
matter. A lot of these things don't matter.
Yeah.
And because what really matters, you have to think about that, guys, right? And this is what the show is about as well. That's why we do this, to help you understand what we think matters. We could be wrong too. Probably not though, but we could be. And it's really a matter of understanding what we're trying to bring you here and how it all hangs together. And we do actually have a show today as well. We're not just going to talk about
Believe
news.
it or not, yeah.
And we're going to talk about we're going to continue talking about ghosts. And you say, well, we talk about good. That's the red herring. I've ever heard one. Not really, because when you talk about ghosts, spiritual phenomena, reincarnation, all that stuff, you're starting to scratch at the surface of what really is.
Yeah, because this is the thing that they're distracting you from. Are all the things that we've been talking about are all connected. They're all connected in the actual world. Not this fake world that we have now that doesn't really exist. It doesn't weigh anything. The internet doesn't weigh anything. Mm-hmm. It's not the internet. The real world isn't the internet. Yeah, we use it as a tool, but it isn't the world. The real world is everything else around you. I can imagine a day, Mackie, when people will have a full existence on the internet and walk outside and there won't be any life outside at all.
Yeah.
None.
That day is approaching. Yeah.
Mm. And this is the problem that I see. I mean, because people are so disconnected from the actual world that it won't matter that it goes, that it's gone, that the contrast, like in 1984, it was so heavy that it frightened you away from it, and yet it's been an instruction manual by the powers that be. So this is what they're doing to us, and I think Idiocracy, the movie, is a great hint towards where we're going, because they're dumbing down to people so hard that it makes it impossible to make a choice. You tell us, Quimby. He knows it. Mackie knows what I'm talking about.
Look, that's true. That's true. There is a certain dumbification happening in the world, but let's understand as well that the vast majority of the population on the planet is completely disenfranchised, doesn't even take part in the discussion. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing here right now, that's really the elite of like it's the 1% of the 1% that can actually take advantage of thinking like this and has the time to think like this. I've recently spent some time in India. I think I've mentioned this.
Yep.
The poverty there is not staggering. It is simply unbelievable. And I mean this in the true sense of the meaning of the word unbelievable. I cannot believe that people live like this. I cannot believe that a government would allow people to live like this. And I cannot believe that with so much abundant wealth in India, which is shown as well, you can see it. It's everywhere, right? You still allow people to live the way they do there. So these people have no internet connection, right? They're not part of the conversation. The vast majority of the planet is not part of this conversation. It's up to us to be the conversation, to be the people that raise this, okay, as an issue, because the vast majority are completely voiceless, right? And that's what the elite would like for us to be all. In an ideal world for them, we'd be living in a feudal society. They're sitting in their castles, they're the robber barons, of the Middle Ages, and we are the peasants toiling in the soil. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Monty Python. There's some beautiful imagery there.
Help! I'm being repressed.
Which one was the? Yeah, Holy Grail. That's
who's your adjudicator over there? Is that your brother?
Yeah, that's right.
It's not Mickey's brother. There you go.
No, but it is quite astonishing. That's a good bit of dirt here. Look at this.
That's my filth.
That's filth. That's the word. My filth.
Help! I'm being
that's the way
repressed.
they see us, right? That's really how they see us. And if you've got a watch that costs $2.5 million, I'm talking about a wristwatch.
Yeah.
And as a child that doesn't have enough to eat tomorrow, I think that really encapsulates where you are as a civilization. Okay, this is really it. Golden toilets, and I mean solid gold, right? Solid gold toilets in people's bathrooms. What? No, really, because I can. That's why. So, you go over there, and I don't want to talk to you anymore because you don't have one. And it is really, 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 really strange that we live in this world. But again, all red herrings, right, to distract us. So you have to ask yourself then, what is it that they're trying to distract us from? And as I said, earlier, start scratching at the real thing: ghosts, reincarnation, the mysteries that come, the immortality question,
Previous civilizations.
Yeah, exactly. Pineal gland, right? Monatomic elements, all the stuff that people like to poo-poo and like to completely
The pineal
gloss over.
gland.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Monatomic gold.
That's the one. Look, guys. All I can say is we got probably a minute or so before the music starts. So if you can donate, please do. This is Listener Funded Radio. Hawk does an awesome job keeping the station up, and we're a little bit short still on the goal for this month, and the month is almost over. If you want to see us, we will probably be at the David Icke Talk in Sydney in July. Most likely, potentially, maybe not. Don't know yet. We'll be wearing our merchandise though, so we'll represent. But if you can make it there, it'll be great to have a chat. And maybe we'll even get David Icke to talk to us. That would be quite the feat.
It's also right now simultaneously as Paracon is in full swing. I couldn't make it there, but I've got some delegates there for us, Meki, and we're going to be interviewing one of the guys from Paracon I think next week it is. So keep your ears peeled, but we'll be back after this break and the music will start up any second. 3, 2, 1. Oh,
Crickets.
Crickets. Yeah, where's my soundboard? I've actually got a soundboard for that very thing.
Just do the cricket. Do it. Do it. Go on. I love it. But yeah, so just to reiterate, freedomslips.com is an awesome platform. I want to call it a station. It's a platform because it's multimedia, and it allows you access to a whole bunch of different platforms as well. It links, into videos. There's documentation, there's text, there's audio, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Other website as well, that you can take advantage of. You can get to our website as well, shinysetout.net, and get your information there. But please do support the station. In all proceeds, all donations go to supporting the station. They're not paying anyone's salary. The paltry a couple $100 wouldn't go very far anyway. So Dave and I do this pro bono. And there's the music. Don't go away.
Longevity.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out, show number 222, 220, and 200. In this case, it doesn't really matter which way you say it. It's
Crowd goes wild.
omnidirectional. We are talking about, we will be talking about ghosts. We've been talking about a whole bunch of other stuff earlier. It was very interesting. The red herrings that are, threading themselves through our collective narrative, I want to say. Because it is. True, they do. They're meant to distract you from what you actually should be thinking about. And where are you going? Where did you come from? Why are we here? And who are you really? Now I have answers to none of these questions right now. But if you listen to the last 221 shows, most of the answers are there. And today we want to share ghosts with you. Why ghosts, you ask? And that's a fair question. Simply because it is such a pervasive motive across all cultures. And a lot of the things are quite similar. There's the festivals of the dead, the Days of the Dead. There's similar things that are being done in cultures that are completely separated in space and time. The Aztec Festival of the Dead is very similar to the Chinese Festival of the Dead and so forth. And that was before they had, well, as far as we know anyway, in modern times, any contact. So what Dave and I have proposed is that maybe this Festival of the Dead, or the Celebration of the Dead, is a festival that predates modern civilization and is a leftover from the civilization that went before us. All right, so it's one of the things that survived, as many other things have, like a cyclopic stone building. All right, monolithic stone building. I mean, that's all over the world, and it seems to be the same kind of method that was used. Right, and now we're looking at, like, festivals and such. Fairy tales as well, guys. Most modern fairy tales have only been written down for a couple hundred years. Probably the most famous are the Brothers Grimm, who went around in the 19th century, Germany, and started writing down Little Red Riding Hood and and other things like that, Cinderella, because before that it hadn't been written down. It was just a folk tale. It was a fairy tale that was told mouth to mouth or mouth to ear, and we don't know how long these have been around. Could have been for thousands of years potentially, right? So today, then, we will delve further into ghosts. If you want to stay with us, we're going to talk about the history here, Dave. We're going to talk about the history of ghosts, and we made it to page 5 last week of 25 pages, and we'll see how we fare today. Let me take the ancient Near East and Egypt, then Dave is going to take us through the classical antiquity. Now, and there are many references to ghosts in Mesopotamia, right? And in Mesopotamian religion, which is the religion of Sumer, Babylon, and Syria, and other early states in Mesopotamia. Traces of these beliefs survive in the later Abrahamic religions that came to dominate the region. Abrahamic being clearly Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Those are the 3 religions founded on the Abrahamic faiths. Ghosts were thought to be created at the time of death, taking on the memory and personality of the dead person. They traveled to the netherworld, not hell, let's be clear about that, where they were assigned a position and led an existence similar in some ways to that of the living. Relatives of the dead were expected to make offerings of food and drink to the dead to ease their condition. Interesting, isn't it? It's all the same around the world. If they did not, the ghosts could inflict misfortune and illness on the living. The Hebrew Bible contains a few references to ghosts associating spiritism with forbidden occult activities. For example, in Deuteronomy 18:11. The most notable reference is in the first book of Samuel, 1 Samuel 28:3. It's in the King James edition, in which a disguised King Saul has the witch of Endor, the witch of Endor, summon the spirit or ghost of Samuel. Endor, right? What? I mean, everything from the Bible? Seriously. There was widespread belief in ghosts in ancient Egyptian culture as well, in the sense of the continued existence of the soul and spirit after death, with the ability to assist or harm the living, and the possibility of a second death, which in fact was also taken on in Christian beliefs. And I want to quickly spend just a second on this. What do I mean by that? Well, if you read the Bible, and I have, it says there, and I'm not religious, but I have read it because you need to understand these things. It says there that the beast, the Antichrist, and the false prophet are going to be thrown into the lake of fire at the end of time, right? That's what's going to happen. They're going to be tormented there forever and ever. But only those 3. Everybody else whose name is not found in the book of life is also thrown into the lake of fire, but for them, that's the second death. Yeah? Not eternal hellfire, damnation, and all that. No, just the second death. Not really nice either, but let's just be clear on what the Bible says. Dave, what does classical antiquity tell us?
Archaic and classical Greece. Ghosts appeared in Homer's Odyssey in Iliad, in which they were described as vanishing as a vapor gibbering and whining into the earth. Homer's ghosts had little interaction with the world of the living. Periodically, they were called upon to provide advice or prophecy, but they do not appear to be particularly feared. Ghosts in the classical world often appeared in the form of vapor or smoke, but at other times they were described as being substantial, appearing as they had been at the time of death, complete with wounds or with the wounds that killed them. By the 5th century BC, classical Greek ghosts had become haunting, frightening creatures who could work to either good or evil purposes. The spirit of the dead was believed to hover near the resting place of the corpse, and cemeteries were places the living avoided. The ancient Greeks held annual feasts to honor and placate the spirits of the dead, to which the family ghosts were invited, and after which they were firmly invited to leave until the same time next year. I think that's comical.
It is.
Meki, the Roman Empire.
Yeah, so the Roman Empire and the late antiquity. In the ancient Romans believed a ghost could be used to exact revenge on an enemy by scratching a curse on a piece of lead or pottery and placing it into a grave. And if you watch the TV series, HBO's TV series Rome, you will have seen that actually happen. Now you know what that means. Plutarch, in the 1st century AD, described the haunting of the baths at Cherone by the ghost of a murdered man. The ghost's loud and frightful groans caused the people of the town to seal up the doors of the building. Now, this is probably one of the first reports, or one of the written reports that we have around hauntings, even poltergeist phenomena, right? Important to remember. And Plutarch was a historian. Okay. Another celebrated account of a haunted house from the ancient classical world is given by Pliny the Younger, about 50 AD. Pliny describes the haunting of a house in Athens by a ghost bound in chains. The hauntings ceased when the ghost's shackled skeleton was unearthed and given a proper reburial. The writers Plautus and Lucian also wrote stories about haunted houses. Important to understand, these are not fictional accounts. These are accounts that they believe happened. In the New Testament, Jesus had to persuade the disciples that he is not a ghost following his resurrection. That's in Luke 24:37-39. In a similar vein, Jesus' followers at first believe him to be a ghost spirit when they see him walking on water. In the 5th century AD, the Christian priest Constantius of Lyon recorded an instance of the recurring theme of the improperly buried dead who come back to haunt the living, who can only cease their haunting when their bones have been discovered and properly reburied. The TV show Supernatural made quite a thing of that. I just want to very quickly say something about Jesus there. The Gnostics believed that Jesus was not a corporeal creature, being, therefore not possible for him to die at the cross. And so these Gnosis texts, which the Cathars believed in as well, portray Jesus as a spiritual rather than a physical being, right? Just to clarify that as well. And that seems to have bled into, at least to some extent, into the modern Bible and his account of walking on water. But Dave, that takes us to the Middle Ages.
It certainly does. Ghosts reported in medieval Europe tended to fall into two categories: the souls of the dead or demons. The souls of the dead returned for a specific purpose. Demonic ghosts were those which existed only to torment or tempt the living. The living could tell them apart by demanding their purpose in the name of Jesus Christ. The soul of the dead person would divulge their mission, while the demonic ghost would be banished at the sound of the holy name. That's a filter, I like that. Medieval European ghosts were more substantial than ghosts described in the Victorian age, and there are accounts of ghosts being wrestled with and physically restrained until their priest could arrive to hear its confession. Some were less solid and could move through walls. Often they were described as paler and sadder versions of the person they had been while alive, and dressed in tattered grey rags. The vast majority of reported sightings were male. There were some reported cases of ghostly armies fighting battles at night in the forest or in the remains of an Iron Age hill fort. As the Wandlebury near Cambridge, England, living knights were sometimes challenged to a single combat by phantom knights which vanished when defeated. It is also in the US on the Civil War fields where thousands of people had died. People have actually said that when they parked their vehicle there, it was like they'd gone back in time, and were being harassed by what they would then know to be the dead on their vehicle, their motor vehicle. So from the medieval period, an apparition of a ghost is recorded from 1211, so that's 1211, at the time of the Albigensian Crusade. Gervase of Tilbury, Marshal of Arles, wrote that the image of Gilhem, a boy recently murdered in a forest, appeared in his cousin's home in Beaucaire near Avignon. This series of visits lasted all of the summer. Though his cousin, who spoke for him, the boy allegedly held conversations with anyone who wished, until the local priest requested the boy to speak to the boy directly, leading to an extended disquisition on the theology. Meki, I thought you might.
The boy narrated the trauma. Hello. Yep. The boy narrated the trauma of death and the unhappiness of his fellow souls in purgatory, and reported that God was most pleased with the ongoing crusade against the Cathar heretics launched 3 years earlier. The time of the Albigensian Crusade in southern France was marked by intense and prolonged warfare, this constant bloodshed and dislocation of population being the context for these reported visits by the murdered boy. Now, just on that, very, very quickly, clearly, these stories were related as propaganda efforts for the crusade against the Cathar heretics. Because we spent a lot of time on the Cathars here, guys, right? And we spent a lot of time on what they believed. And it was, in fact, a ruthless crusade that the church launched against them, killing tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of them. And clearly, they needed some kind of vindication for this. And I think this particular story here about this boy is part of that propaganda effort to say, well, see, the boy came, back after death because God, wants us to know that we're doing the right thing, killing all these heretic Cathars. Makes perfect sense to me. Let's do more of that. Haunted houses are, of course, also featured in the 9th century Arabian Nights, such as the tale of Ali the Korean and the haunted house in Baghdad. Which brings us to the European Renaissance and Romanticism. Renaissance magic took a revived interest in the occult, including necromancy, which is the magic of the dead, if you will. In the era of the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation, there was frequently a backlash against unwholesome interests in the dark arts, typified by writers such as Thomas Erastus. The Swiss Reformed pastor Ludwig Lavater supplied one of the most frequently reprinted books of the period with his Of Ghosts and Spirits Walking by Night. A belief found in various locations all over Europe was that ghosts can stem from the excessive grief of the living, whose mourning interferes with the dead's peaceful rest. And that is actually a feature or belief that is widespread in the world, where so unless you can get over your grief to some extent, unless or your grief is excessive, the spirit of the departed cannot move on. It's bound here. So that's not just in European, it's believed in Asia, elsewhere as well. In many folk tales from around the world, the hero arranges for the burial of a dead man. Soon after, he gains a companion who aids him, and in the end, the hero's companion reveals that he is, in fact, the dead man. Instances of this include the Italian fairy tale Fair Brow and the Swedish The Bird Grip. But Dave, that now takes us into the modern period of the Western culture.
Yeah, we've seen a big swing and change in belief systems from then. So spiritualism is monotheistic, that'll do, belief system or religion, postulating a belief in God, but with a distinguishing feature of belief that spirits of the dead residing in a spirit world can be contacted by mediums who can then provide information about their afterlife. And we've seen some very popular examples of those in large stadiums, for instance, and a single person on stage contacting the past, the passed on. Spiritualism developed in the United States and reached its peak growth in membership from the 1840s to the 1920s. especially in English language countries by 1897. It was said to have more than 8 million followers in the United States and Europe. Spiritualism is currently practiced primarily through various denominational spiritualists churches in the United States and United Kingdom, and here too, I have to say. My mother was a self-professed medium herself. We called her a large.
And just to be clear as well, I mean, while there was an upswing of interest in this during the 19th century, I guess the phenomenon of media is much older than that, right? And in fact, the attempt to contact the dead is also much older. It was just at that time, and it's a really interesting time in Europe as well, Dave.
It became popular.
It was, I guess, very popular, right? This was after Napoleon had, invaded, if you will, Egypt, and a lot of artifacts from Egypt were brought back. There was a renewed interest in the Orient, right, in the East, and their spiritual belief system. It's the time of Madame Blavatsky. It's the time of the Theosophists, Reicher and so forth, and it's a very interesting spiritual. Even Aleister Crowley falls into this time period. It's a very interesting time, especially in England and Germany, to see how people dealt with, like, a clash of cultures, right? Especially in the spiritual spaces. So the 19th century, if you're interested in this kind of thing, you should do some research and really look into it. And a lot of the spiritual movements that are around today originated at that time, specifically in England and Germany. Now, clearly, Dave, there is a scientific skepticism, and we want to share that with you as well. What do scientists tell us about these ghosts? The physician John Ferrier wrote the following: an essay towards a theory of apparitions in 1813, in which he argued that sightings of ghosts were the result of optical illusions. So, not hallucinations, but optical illusions. Later, the French physician Alexandre Jacques-François Brière de Bosmont, that's a mouthful, you don't say that every day, published on hallucinations or the rational history of apparitions, dreams, ecstasy, magnetism, and somnambulism. Now, magnetism, it was a new phenomenon in the 19th century, and somnambulism simply means sleepwalking. And that was published in 1845, in which he claimed sightings of ghosts were the result of hallucinations. So we have optical illusions, and now we have hallucinations. Joe Nickell of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, I always love it when they say that, wrote that there was no credible scientific evidence that any location was inhabited by spirits of the dead. Limitations of human perception and ordinary physical explanations can account for ghost sightings. For example, air pressure changes in a home causing doors to slam, or lights from a passing car reflected through a window at night. I agree with that. Pareidolia, an innate tendency to recognize patterns in random perceptions, is what some skeptics believe causes people to believe that they have seen ghosts. Now, common examples of pareidolia, and we've mentioned this in the past as well, include seeing images of animals or faces in the clouds, right? The man in the moon rabbit, or hearing hidden messages on records when played in reverse. Now, that last one...
Another one bites the dust.
Exactly. Now
that was intentionally put there. That's not pareidolia.
Exactly. But see, the thing is this, right? Now, I want to be very, very clear with this. Pareidolia refers to things that we want to see. And then, like shapes resemble something and our brain puts it together. Mm-hmm. The hidden messages on records, when you play them in reverse, well, they are there. Yeah, you can hear them. You don't really have to convince yourself, for the most part, that they're there. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I think this phenomenon is slightly outside of the pareidolia. I don't want to spend too much time on it, though. So, now reports of ghosts seen out of the corner of the eye may be accounted for by the sensitivity of human peripheral vision. In fact, our peripheral vision, when it comes to motion, is much more acute than our frontal vision. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's simply because we don't want tigers and lions sneaking up on us, right? That's right. It's a simple biological mechanism here. According to Nickell, peripheral vision can easily mislead, especially late at night when the brain is tired and more likely to misinterpret sights and sounds. This statement I disagree with.
I disagree, right? As well. Yep.
Yeah, because very simply put, it's a survival mechanism for us. And while we may overinterpret, right, when there is motion of the corner of the eye, we will pick it up. All right, we will pick it up because that's what that's designed to do. So even if you then turn to it and look at it and there's nothing there, I would say there was motion that you detected. All right, I would say. Some researchers, such as Michael Persinger of Laurentian University in Canada, have speculated that changes in geomagnetic fields, for example, created by tectonic stresses in the Earth's crust or solar activity, could stimulate the brain's temporal lobes and produce many of the experiences associated with hauntings. Sound is thought to be another cause of supposed sightings. I mean, now they're really reaching for the straws, right?
They are.
Richard Lord and Richard Wiseman have concluded that infrasound can cause humans to experience bizarre feelings in a room.
That's
such
true.
as anxiety. That is true, yeah.
Yep,
Extreme
that's true.
sorrow, a feeling of being watched, or even the chills. Now, in fact, the movie Alien made use of subsonic frequencies to induce fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Now, as if it isn't scary enough when you watch it for the first time, they also used that technique to make you feel even more scared. Now, they also say that carbon monoxide poisoning can cause changes in perception of the visual and auditory systems, and it was speculated upon as a possible explanation for haunted houses as early as 1921. Now, these are explanations that fall well within what Dave and I have termed, the rational physical sciences, and debunkers like to use it, and it's all, your mind plays tricks on you, and okay, you know what? But only one sighting has to be real for ghosts to exist. It's the same thing we've said about unidentified flying objects. Only one sighting has to be real out of the tens of thousands that have occurred for it to be real, right, Dave?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. And I'll tell you, the one that the being that sat on my bed that was invisible, depressed the doona, moved the bed with weight, was not an apparition, it wasn't pareidolia, and I'd love to be able to talk to the people who are trying to debunk it and just say, look, it's possible that these things are the cause. They're not saying, none of them are saying that ghosts don't exist. If you notice what they're saying as opposed to what they're not saying. Mm-hmm. So they don't flat out say, well, it's impossible that ghosts exist, so it can only be these other things. No, they're open to it as much as everyone else. So the physical I'll put my teeth back in. The physical manifestations, which are poltergeists. Now, I was in the US when the Poltergeist movie came out, and it was quite scary. I like the psychological effect of a big developer developing a Native American cemetery, not moving the bodies and having that whole thing. I loved what that was all about. I do love the Hollywood in it, but it came from a real event. The origin of the poltergeist, real events of the physical being contacted by ghosts and being thrown around the room. And there's a beautiful image here, it's in the show notes. You should have a look. It's a newspaper article from a French paper, and it says, Therese Sells, a 14-year-old domestic servant, experiences poltergeist activity in the home of her employer. She's only 14 years old. She's a servant, Mickey. Goodness me.
Yep.
And that's she was in Algeria, as featured on the cover of the French magazine La Vie Mystérieuse, which is the mysteries, life's mysteries. I suspect that would be.
That's exactly right. Very good. Yep.
I did French, but anyway, that was in 1911. Mm-hmm. You've got to remember this. So when it has a physical contact, they're usually not friendly, and they've got a bee in their bonnet. So in folklore, the paranormal, A poltergeist is the apparent manifestation of an imperceptible but noisy, disruptive and destructive entity. Most accounts of poltergeist manifestations involve noises and destruction that have no apparent cause, i.e., nothing in the physical world seems to have caused what is occurring. Reports also include inanimate objects being picked up and thrown as if by an invisible person, noises such as knocking, rapping, or even human voices. Petty physical attacks on human beings, such as pinching, biting, and hitting. Poltergeists have traditionally been described in folklore as troublesome spirits who, unlike ghosts, haunt a particular person instead of a specific location. Such alleged poltergeist manifestations have been reported in many cultures in countries including the United States, Japan, Brazil, Australia, and most European nations. The earliest recorded cases date back to the 1st century.
And just to be very clear here, Dave and I think that the poltergeist phenomenon might in fact be a variety of phenomena, right? There might be a variety of different explanations for different types of activities here, and they could vary greatly. And if you want to know about that, then I would urge you to look at the Ghost Walker Ranch phenomenon.
Skinwalker.
We did a show on sorry. You're quite right. Skinwalker Ranch. Ghost walkers are in fact something else entirely. The Skinwalker Ranch phenomenon, which we did a show on as well. The location of the ranch has been revealed, the name of it as well, so you can look it up yourselves. So, because some of the poltergeist phenomena that you see can't be explained within our 4 dimensions, time being the dimension of duration, of course, here, they can only be explained if you've got higher dimensional physical spaces as well, right? And in fact, the poltergeist phenomenon is not a passive phenomenon. What do I mean by that? It's a phenomenon that will react to you. Okay, it will actually react to whatever you do. So when you try to study it, and people have tried to study it and record it, and you might have seen movies like Poltergeist, where people come in with all kinds of fandangled, contraptions and try to measure this and that, flux capacitor and whatever. That actually happens. Okay. And that, but it isn't always crowned with success, because it seems that the phenomenon changes and reacts to us observing it, which is if you study quantum physics, is a very very familiar phenomenon, the observer effect, right? So clearly something there knows it's being studied. I just want to be clear that it may not necessarily all be completely related to the spirits of the dearly departed, but could incorporate a whole range of different phenomena here, right? Which brings us to the etymology of the word itself, poltergeist. The word poltergeist, in fact, comes from the German, from 2 German words. One is poltern, which really just means to make noise. Polterabend, for example, is what precedes a wedding, where you break all manner of crockery and cups and plates and so forth. The belief being, of course, that you will then break none during the marriage. Right? More or less successful or not, I don't know. And Geist, which simply means ghost or spirit, right? Or even, so essentially it's a collective term. And then if you put them together, Poltergeist, which is, Germans love compound words, simply means a noisy ghost, or a ghost that makes noise.
Mackie, I've got just an aside. What's Zeitgeist then?
Well, Zeitgeist means Zeit means time, so Zeitgeist means the spirit of the times, or the spirit of the time we live in, right? It is sort of like your Weltanschauung, or your view of the world at that particular time, right? Cool. Zeitgeist. But so Geist not in the spooky sense, but rather in the spirit sense of the word. Now there are interpretations around that as well, and the first one here was put forward by Allan Kardec, which is spiritual, believed that poltergeists were spirits associated with the elements, elemental spirits. Poltergeist activity has often been believed to be the work of malicious ghosts. According to Allan Kardec, the founder of Spiritism, poltergeists are in fact manifestations of disembodied spirits of low level, belonging to the 6th class of the 3rd order. They are believed to be closely associated with the elements, which are, of course, fire, air, water, and earth. So they're elementals. Okay, they're earth elementals, fire elementals, water, and earth elementals. That's what he believed. What does psychokinesis tell us, Dave?
In parapsychology, Nandor Fodor proposed that poltergeist disturbances were caused by human agents suffering from some form of emotional stress or tension. William J. Roll studied 116 poltergeist cases and found that the agents were often children or teenagers, and supposed that recurrent neuronal discharges resulting in epileptic symptoms may cause recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, which is RSPK, which would affect the person's surroundings.
Fascinating. And see, this is interesting
psychokinetic.
As well, I think that's part. I mean, I think some of the poltergeist phenomena are in fact exactly that.
An
right?
uncontrolled
kinesis. Yeah, but see,
Wow.
the thing is this here, Dave. I mean, clearly this is not accepted by science either. Not at all.
It
Right?
doesn't this sound,
We're still very firmly.
Meki, doesn't it sound just like, one of those prequel X-Men episodes where someone doesn't know that they've got a psychokinesis and
Yes.
inadvertently is throwing everything off the table with their mind?
Absolutely.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, in fact, in our society, we would strongly discourage that kind of behavior, and the person that has these abilities would probably feel victimized or like a freak, and
Don't
would
be
certainly
silly.
try to.
You just tuck those away, stomp them down, push them down to the ground, and never use them again.
And then you release them at an inappropriate moment at a ball game, right? So. But again, it's another Simpsons thing. They will sue us. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, they're gonna. All right, so because I just realised that was another Simpsons quote. Now, if you, Becky, what are the other things?
Oh yes. Now, attempts have been made to explain scientifically poltergeist disturbances that have not been traced to fraud. So, just as a preamble here, clearly some cases are just there to gain notoriety, and they were fraudulent and all of that wonderful stuff. So, but apparently here, there are some disturbances that were not, clearly fraudulent. And the psychical investigator, Guy William Lambert, proposed a geophysical explanation for poltergeist activity, which results from the activity of underground water and other factors. Sort of gives more credence to Feng Shui, I guess. According to Lambert, many reported poltergeist incidents can be accounted for by physical causes such as subterranean rivers, tidal patterns, geological factors, and shifts in the house foundation, as well as climate change. His theory was that an underground watercourse may flow under haunted locations, and that after heavy rainfall, the stream could cause structural movement of the property, possibly causing the house to vibrate and move objects. Yes, but not make them fly around, and certainly not stack chairs up on top of each other. David Turner, a retired physical chemist, suggested that ball lightning,
Here we go.
another phenomenon, could cause inanimate objects to move erratically. Michael Persinger has theorized that seismic activity could cause poltergeist phenomena. Persinger's case studies have also shown a complex interaction between geomagnetism, household electrical equipment, and the brain physiology of the individual. Now, poltergeist phenomena actually predate household electrical equipment, I like to say here. Skeptics such as Milbourne Christopher have found that some cases of poltergeist activity can be attributed to unusual air currents, such as
wind.
a 1957. Yeah, right. I know. A 1957 case on Cape Cod, where downdrafts from an uncovered chimney became strong enough to blow a mirror off a wall, overturn chairs, and knock things off shelves. I would like to believe that if I had been in the house and felt a strong draft, I would not have blamed a poltergeist. However,
Unless it's on your insurance policy.
Right. Specific. Oh, pays out triple. Other investigators have postulated that psychopathology or aggression in the subjects themselves may be responsible for the action of movement of objects in poltergeist cases. I'm not sure what that means. Nandor Fodor compared some reports of poltergeist activity by hysterical conversion symptoms resulting from an emotional tension of the subject. Owen, in 1978, cited a number of poltergeist cases in which the subject displayed signs of hysteria. So what we're saying here is that these would be cases of psychokinesis as well, brought on by stress and hysteria. Just another way of putting that, I guess. However, guys, we do want to share with you some famous cases, so you can make up your own mind about it. But at this point, what we have arrived at, we have so far, just to take stock very quickly, we have seen that ghosts and ghostly phenomena supersede all cultures. Right? They simply are there and have been since recorded time, and well before that, I would imagine. So ghosts are a phenomenon that has been with everybody. Right? We all, and we have similar festivals. The Festival of the Dead, where we offer food and other things to appease them. We've also now seen there seems to be some kind of physical interaction, and I'm not saying that all poltergeist phenomena are in fact related to ghosts, but some may very well be, right? So now we're going into territory which brings a little more, let's call it, proof, albeit anecdotal, to the poltergeist phenomenon. What's happening in Lithobolia? Lithobolia, I love that.
Lithobolia, or the stone-throwing devil, is a pamphlet that records poltergeist activity that allegedly took place in the tavern of George and Alice Walton in 1682. 2 copies of the pamphlet exist in the British Museum. Wow, they thought it was important enough to have in the museum. Make you think about that for a minute. The Waltons Tavern was located in Newcastle, New Hampshire, then known as the Great Island. Lithobolia was written by R.C. Richard Chamberlain, the Secretary of the Colony of New Hampshire in 1666. Chamberlain was boarding at the Walton Tavern and witnessed the attack. The pamphlet was later printed in London by Chamberlain in 1698. So some 32 years later, the pamphlet was printed. The opening reads, Lithobolia, or stone-throwing devil, being an exact and true account, by way of journal, of the various actions of infernal spirits. I love that word, infernal. Infernal spirits, or devils incarnate, witches, or both, and the great disturbance and amazement they gave to George Walton's family at a place called Great Island, in the country of New Hampshire in New England, chiefly in throwing about by an invisible hand stones, brick bats of all sizes, with several other things as hammers, mauls, iron crows, spits, and other utensils, as came into their hellish minds, and this for space of a quarter of a year. I love the way it's described.
Right. I mean, it is. In fact, look, so clearly he didn't remember it after 32 years. He wrote it down at the time because one thing that people forget is that we actually used to have journals. Mm-hmm. Right, we used to have diaries. Some people do today still. And a person like Richard Chamberlain, who was the secretary of the colony of New Hampshire, would certainly have kept a journal because he was an important official, right? Mm-hmm. And his daily daily routine would be captured, especially a special event like this. Now, 2 things. 1, he was the secretary of the colony of New Hampshire, right? And when he says exact and true account, I'm tempted to believe him because he's not Jonathan Swift, because that's how Jonathan Swift starts Gulliver's Travels, right? Being an exact and true account of these events, la la la. So it was a way of saying this, but clearly Jonathan Swift probably was using it in an ironic fashion, whereas I don't think Richard Chamberlain was, right? I think Richard Chamberlain truly believed what he was writing, number 1. Number 2, this took a quarter of a year to transpire. If there had been a really strong breeze or an earthquake or some such, which can pick up iron crows, hammers on malls, which is like a tornado, I think.
Stones
right?
and bricks.
Yeah. People would have noticed. And because it was within a residence, right? In a tavern, in fact. We can probably rule out a strong breeze, or maybe even the shifting of a house based on whatever geological movements happened underneath it, even if there were a river under it. So this is a very interesting account, and for these two reasons. But I mean, this is for 3 months, Dave. This went on for 3 months, right?
Yeah. So an extraordinary event, and you have to also hear that these weren't done for amusement.
Yep.
They weren't. That whatever was doing it wasn't doing it to amuse. It was doing it in a fashion which showed an angst or anger, and he says hellish mind. So it was done. It wasn't, a friendly thing. It didn't, quietly hover it across the room. It wasn't an invisible man who picked it up and thought, oh, I'm going to have some fun with these people, and hovered it in front of them or whatever, yeah? There was no teasing. This is just something that happened. Anything that could be picked up was thrown.
Yep. Pretty much. Which brings us to Borley Rectory. Borley Rectory, and this particular case is from 1937, even though, and when I share this with you in a second, you will understand why there were many, many more. William Roll, Hans Bender, and Harry Price are perhaps three of the most famous poltergeist investigators in the annals of parapsychology. Harry Price investigated Borley Rectory, which is often called the most haunted house in England. Okay, so Borley Rectory is actually near Sudbury in Essex, all right? And it looks innocuous enough, right, when you see the picture. It was built in 1863, right? But ever since then, it has just been enormously haunted, right? And it was just a place where people were actually physically attacked, right? The servants' bells in the house rang of their own. Reverend Foister was actually living there for a while, but his child was attacked by something horrible, apparently, right? And the family left after that, and all successive incumbents have refused to live in the house because it was a rectory. It means that the reverend or the parishioners, the head of the parishioners would live in that particular house. Okay, so this is the most haunted house in England, and if you want to know more about it, please look it up for yourselves.
What is it again?
This is Borley Rectory, the most haunted house in England.
Wow.
Borley Rectory. It's fascinating stuff there. Which brings us to Rosenheim.
In Germany. This is in 1967. That's the year I was born. Dr. Friedberg Karger was one of the two physicists from the Max Planck Institute who helped to investigate perhaps the most validated, remember that word, poltergeist case in recorded history. Anne-Marie Schneider, a 19-year-old secretary in a law firm in Rosenheim, a town in southern Germany, was seemingly the unwitting cause of much chaos and controversy in the firm, including disruption of electricity and telephone lines, the rotation of a picture, swinging lamps which were captured on video, which was one of the first times any poltergeist activity had been captured on film, and strange sounds that sounded electrical in origin were recorded. Karger stated that these experiments were really a challenge to physics, and the disturbances could be 100% shown not to be explainable by known physics. Fraud was not proven despite intensive investigation by the physicists, journalists, and the police. The effects moved with the young woman when she changed jobs until they finally faded out, disappeared, and never reoccurred.
Fascinating stuff. Now, there are many other cases, and we just want to mention them, I think, in passing, because there's just too many to go into. But I just want to give you an idea of the breadth of cases that exist there. They're all part of the show notes. There was the Black Monk of Pontefract, the Enfield poltergeist in 1977, the drummer of Tedworth in 1662. Then there was also poltergeist in Japan in 1740 during the Edo period. Eizo Otake, a clerk of court, reported that after his father had hired a girl from Ikeriji village, Shitagaya, which is a province in Japan, as a domestic servant, objects in the house and in the yard began moving by themselves. The phenomenon continued for several days until the girl was dismissed, clearly a potential case for psychokinesis. There was the wizard in 1997, the Bell Witch of Tennessee, which the phenomenon lasted from 1817 to 1872. 60 years almost. The haunting of the Fox sisters, right? Because it started in the spiritualism movement, one of the most famous cases. The Great Amherst mystery. Hofgarten, which was near Weimar in Germany. Eleanor Zugen, the Romanian poltergeist girl, 1926. The Epworth Rectory. Geff, the Talking Mongoose in 1931. The possession case of Robbie Mannheim in 1949. The Thornton Road poltergeist of Birmingham in 1981. The case of Tina Resch in 1984. The Orland Hills case located on 169th Street in 1988. Contemporary Oklahoma talking poltergeist cases. The stone-throwing spook of Little Dixie, 1995. The Mackenzie poltergeist in 1998. Okay, the Canetto di Caronia fires poltergeist, 2004. The South Shields poltergeist, 2005-2006. Miami poltergeist, 2008. Barnsley, which is near Sheffield in England, 2009. So we can see this phenomenon is right up into the modern times. The Easington Council in County Durham in the UK paid half of a medium's exorcism fee to remove a poltergeist from council housing in Peterlee, deemed more cost-effective than relocation of the tenants. The council paid half the medium's exorcism fee. Hello, this stuff is taken seriously, guys, right? Then there are many others. There's a really famous one here, Jim the Coventry poltergeist, 2011. In a series of articles during March 2011, The Sun reported, The Sun is a paper in the UK, reported the story of Lisa Manning and her children. According to those articles, the family observed pots and pans being thrown around the kitchen, blinds moving up and down, lights going on and off, doors locking themselves, chairs flying across the room, and cupboard doors opening and banging shut before being ripped off their hinges, among other phenomena. The strange occurrences started a couple of weeks after Manning and her children moved into the Coventry Council house. Again, it seems that either people are haunted or the people have some kind of hidden talent, which is completely unbeknown to them. The strange occurrences the disturbances became more malevolent when the poltergeist pushed the family's two dogs down the stairs. One being injured so severely they had to be put down. So these poltergeist phenomena have a physical effect on the living. In this case,
and not
the
just
injury being
humans.
so grave. Sorry?
To affect a dog.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Pushed the dog physically.
Yep.
That's astonishing stuff, guys. Now, the housing association who owns the property sent a priest who blessed the house, and the phenomena temporarily abated for a couple of weeks before starting up again. Then, renowned medium Derek Acora visited Manning's home, stating that he was able to communicate with a spirit and that it was called Jim, and had died from a heart attack at the age of 58 at around 1900. Acora then performed an exorcism ceremony, after which the paranormal activity ceased. The Sun report also includes a video which shows a closet door opening and the chair moving across the floor with no visible cause. Yeah, Lisa Manning is quoted as having taken the video via hidden camera. So we have observable phenomena here, guys. These are not hallucinations or optical illusions, as was intimated earlier. Okay, so a hallucination you can't really capture on camera, nor an optical illusion. These are completely, in your mind, nowhere else. There are, however, a great number of pictures and videos of ghosts, guys. There really are. Don't think we have time for all of them.
No.
Today.
Do you know what? Do you know what, Mickey? I know that Jebed was seeing if we could delay the show a bit. I'm in the middle of moving everything. I'm not sure if you can run long. Can you run long a little long today? 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. You've got word there. Okay. Jebed. So I'm not sure, Mickey, that I'm able to bring I'm going to see if I can add the picture to. Yeah, I can. It's working again. Yay.
Good man.
All right. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you should be able to see some of the pictures and things we're bringing, okay? So this is the Tulip Staircase Ghost. In 1966, retired clergyman Reverend Ralph Hardy, I don't know how I got Falf, was taking a picture of the spiral staircase known as the Tulip Staircase. Jebe, happy to run a little long after the break if you like, mate. Just give me a message. Everyone, hang tight. We'll see you after the break.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
Hi, this is Bo.
And this is Rocco.
And the Bo and Rocco Show is here to offer insight into legal and lawful remedies. Our goal is to remain free and help others remain free in an ever-increasing police-like state. With the help of our guests, we try to answer questions such as what went wrong and what can we do about it.
So tune into Revolution Radio at www.freedomslips.com Wednesday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to listen to the Bo and Rocco Show.
You don't need to expect us.
We're already here.
Revolution Radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started?
Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right. You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Listen in on Mondays, 8 Eastern Time on Revolution Radio for Journeys with JP. With a variety of guests, each giving their perspective on their journey into the now. Join me and my guests Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio Studio B.
opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, this is Dave from Mickey. Dave from Mickey. I don't know where my brain is, Mickey. I think I'm coming down with this thing. This is Dave.
I hope you're not.
Dave and Mickey from Shiny Side Out. Yes, it will be bad, and you'll see my head wrapped up like the olden days. You know what I'm picturing there, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
know.
Look, just everyone, the mumps are getting around where I live. Haven't seen those for at least 20 years, 25 years, but they seem to have come back. So, our school has sent out warnings and you don't, it's got a gestation period, just for FYI, between 12 and 25 days. So you probably have come in contact with it already, almost a month ago by the time, you start presenting. So anyway, look, just to wind this out, we're doing show 222, 222, 220 and 200, what Mackie would say. He left that alone. And and we're talking about ghosts. And you know what? We've got a couple of pictures here. And just before the break, we've been given a little bit of extra time as the host of the roundtable is just preparing for it. So I wanted to bring you just a couple of things we could wind out this topic. All right. So experts analysed this picture of the tulip staircase and the negative, and verified that it had not been tampered with or manipulated in any way. So it meant that what it had captured. The photo served as proof that many ghostly encounters at the Queen's house were real. Footsteps, slamming doors, and the chanting voices of children are often heard around the staircase. Visitors to the museum have been pinched by unseen fingers during their tour. I'm going to leave any jokes aside on that one. You have to think about this. So full body apparitions have been seen on many occasions. One such apparition appears to be mopping up blood from the bottom of the stairs. Historians say that 300 years ago a maid was thrown from the top of the stairs and fell 50 feet to her death, which might explain the ghostly cleanup crew. Mackie?
Now, which brings us to the backseat ghost. Backseat. It's probably one of the, I guess, the more popular themes of horror movies. You get in your car and there's something behind you. It's really not what you want. You don't want to turn around and see a zombie sitting there behind you. You really don't. But apparently, this is exactly what happened. In 1959. Mabel Chinnery was visiting the grave of her mother in a British graveyard when she took a picture of her husband who was waiting alone in the car. So she's outside the car and she's taking a picture. I'm looking at the picture right now, and she's taking a picture of her husband. Now, it wasn't until Mrs. Chinnery had the film developed that they realized her husband hadn't been waiting alone after all. The picture shows a person wearing glasses sitting in the back seat, and Mrs. Chinnery immediately recognized the figure as being her mother. The mother, in fact, whose grave she had just visited. A photographic expert who examined the print determined that the image of the woman was neither a reflection nor a double exposure, even going as far as to stake his reputation on the fact that the picture is genuine. And then just a very quick thing here before we go on with these are now physical manifestations that have been recorded. Okay, this is a physical this is the physical evidence for something not quite understood. Okay, which brings us to the Eastern State Penitentiary.
When the TAPS crew of the TV show Ghost Hunters visited Philadelphia's historic Eastern State Penitentiary, they captured this remarkable footage of something running up towards the camera and then turning and running back the other way. My goodness me.
Yeah, we urge you to check out that video for yourselves and play the video right now, because I'm sure there's some kind of license implications, so we don't want to do that.
So we're not touching that with the barge pole. So, but this is one of the things. Now, the invention of video has captured a lot of things which are there from like security camera feeds and have not been modified in any way. You know, mysterious lights, things hovering over cities. These are real. There's even in the Michael Jackson footage, the news crew showed that shadow drift across the hallway. This stuff is there. And Mekki and I mean, I'm a firm believer in this phenomenon, whether or not, and like Mekki said earlier, that it's a cross between a number of different ones.
Yeah,
it could be cross-dimensional. It could be psychokinesis. In some cases, we don't know where this is. I know that the person that lived in and haunted the house that we lived in the city, which was 200 years old. The house was 200 years old. I know that person died in the house. They told me, and I'm the first person account in that one. So, you know, I'm a believer. I hope you guys are too. You ask anyone, they'll have some kind of ghost story. Mekki, what's the next one?
The next one is the Toys R Us ghost. You know, that's maybe something that you don't want to know about. The Toys R Us in Sunnyvale, California, is home to a spirit named John, and again, that's him leaning against a wall in the photo above. Now, the photo, I don't know if Dave, you can show that photo, but
it's up there on the video feed.
Okay, great. So there's essentially a picture of I don't know, people in the foreground and the shelves to either side. And in the background, you can see a figure standing there. It's leaning against the wall, right? But apparently that person was not there. Yeah. The photo was in fact taken during a TV filming of the show. That's incredible. And no one who was in the room at the time saw the man, yet he turned up on the infrared photograph. So he was giving off heat. Psychics like the renowned Sylvia Brown have visited the store multiple times and have conducted seances in which they found out John's name and so on. The story is that John was a preacher and a ranch hand back in the 1880s. On the land, in fact, where the store now sits. Reports of how he died vary, but the general consensus is that he bled to death while chopping wood. So clearly nothing sinister there. Employees of the Toys R Us say that John often plays pranks on them and on customers, including following people into the ladies' room and turning on the water faucets, tossing dolls off the shelves and whispering employees' names in their ear, only to have them turn and see no one standing near them. So maybe not quite a malicious ghost, but somewhat of a jokester. The next picture, though, is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Look, do you know what this one reminds me of? The girl playing in the field with the spaceman.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So this is Ghost of Grandpa. Denise Russell took this photograph of her grandmother in 1997. Her granny lived independently into her 90s. And during a family picnic just before her death, Denise snapped this picture. No one noticed the man standing behind her grandmother for over 3 years. But when the family finally noticed him, they recognized him to be none other than Denise's grandfather, who had been dead since 1984. Wow. And the old black and white, just to confirm this, old black and white photographs of the grandfather confirmed their suspicions. So they were able to confirm that man there was the grandfather.
And he seems to be not growing out of the grandmother's head, but certainly standing behind her at some distance, right? Because there's perspective here. It's just astonishing.
Remember that Mekki and I have advised you all and made you all aware that we only see a very slim part of visible light. We don't see all of visible light. And so that figure was captured by the film, which may have had a slightly greater view of visible light than we can see. So that's why we couldn't see it.
So apart from the filters that our consciousness imposes upon reality, they are actually biological and physical filters. So we cannot see beyond a certain spectrum that Dave has just mentioned. And this clearly is evidence of that, because there's something there that, because look, the film captured something, guys. It's there. It's on the film, right?
That's
so
right.
The light bounced off. So this is how film works. Okay? Let me give you a quick lesson on photography. The aperture opens, which is your lens. So it opens up and lets light in in the olden days on a piece of paper or whatever that was chemically treated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this chemically treated paper can in fact absorb light, and any light that falls upon it will cause a chemical reaction, which imprints itself as a picture. Right? You then take that negative, it's called, and go ahead and you put it through a bath of other chemicals, and at that point, you develop an image that comes off that film that you captured. But it's the light that fell originally onto the film lens, right? The light physically altered the chemistry of the paper in your camera. Yeah, it's a physical chemical reaction. It's a real thing. It captured something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, just to wanted to say that there was the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, taken in 1936 by Captain Provant and Indre Shira. This is perhaps the most famous ghostly image of all time. Yet to this day, no one has been able to disprove his authenticity. All right, so not a fraud. The photographers were visiting Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England, to take pictures for Country Life magazine when they captured the original lady of the house, Lady Dorothy Townsend, descending the staircase. Provant witnessed the apparition with his eye first, then managed to lift his camera and take his famous photograph. I don't know if you can share that, but there's like a ghostly figure descending the stairs.
Absolutely, I have done. This is one of my favorites. When I looked through the show notes, I couldn't believe this one. So,
Yeah,
but I do believe it. It's just hard to. Okay. In 1946, a woman named Mrs. Andrews took this picture of her deceased daughter's gravestone in Queensland, Australia. Her daughter had been just 17 when she died the previous year. When the film was developed, Mrs. Andrews was shocked to see the image of an infant girl looking directly into her camera. There had been no children in the cemetery that day, and Mrs. Andrews didn't know any babies whose pictures she'd have taken with her camera. She also remarked that the child did not look like her own daughter when her daughter was an infant. That's remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, Australian paranormal researcher Tony Healy, who we've interviewed, Mekki,
Yes, we have. That's right.
investigated the case and found the graves of two infant girls very near to Mrs. Andrews' daughter's grave.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a whole raft of phenomena we're completely unaware of. The Mount Washington Hotel. Opened in 1902, the Mount Washington Resort in Carroll, New Hampshire is reportedly home to several spirits. Most notably, the ghost of a princess who stayed in the hotel during each summer is said to interact with guests quite frequently. The princess preferred the comfort of her own bed, and the bed remains in room 314 to this day. A paranormal investigation crew, TAPS, which is part of Ghost Hunters, were the first to conduct an investigation of the Grand Hotel, and they produced some amazing proof of spirit manifestations. In his audio clip, taken in the famed Princess Suite, lead investigators Jay and Grant ask, "Princess, are you in here?" And the immediate reply is, "Of course I'm in here. Where are you?"
Wow.
A little freaky.
Yeah, that's part of the audio recording systems that they've got now, which work just outside of the human spectrum, and are very, very sensitive. And it's extraordinary to see these. Now, this next one gives me a chill when I see it. And this is the ghostly farm boy. Photographer Neil Sandbuck was taking pictures around the farm in Hertfordshire, England, when he captured this astounding picture. When Sandbuck looked at the digital photo later, he couldn't believe his eyes. He was certain that he had not overlooked a child hanging around the farm that day. He later asked the farm owners if they had ever had any supernatural experiences there. He did not tell them about the photo, and the owners confirmed that they had witnessed the spectre of a boy in white nightclothes many times before.
Wow. Which brings us to the final story, at which point the show will end. And Gerber, if you want to take over at that point, that's fine as well. We'll probably say our goodbyes. But this is the Oklahoma impound lot ghost. A little pedestrian to end on, but I think it's interesting. One night in Oklahoma, there were 3 fatal car crashes that killed several people. The wrecked vehicles were taken to the local impound lot, and the employees there witnessed something amazing on their surveillance cameras. A white figure moving around the destroyed cars. Family members of one of the accident victims are certain that the figure is their loved one trying to give them a message. So this was captured by a surveillance camera at the impound lot. A white figure hovering around the actual accident cars, guys. Right? So there are many more like this. These are just the most famous ones that we've shared with you here. So clearly, something is happening. Something that can be captured as physical evidence on video, on photographs, on sound recording equipment as well. Right?
And Meckie's right. That is evidence of the physical.
Mm-hmm. So it's not a hallucination. It's not an optical illusion.
It's not an earthquake.
Cameras don't really hallucinate that much now, do they?
And it's not an underground river, and it isn't wind, and it's not psychokinesis, where the person has a particular talent that they were unaware of, which, you know what, I think that would make sense that's occurred in some poltergeist situations. But I'd have to say, you know what? Seeing the evidence, the physical evidence of light being exposed to film, which we didn't see at the time, not you and I, Meckie, but you know the photographer not seeing, as humans we didn't see it. It doesn't astound me. It does not astound me at all, and it's. I think it behooves science to ignore it. I think what they need to do is step it up and say, you know what, this is real. It is happening. Mm-hmm. And there's so much more. This is the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, it is. It is, absolutely. And in fact, like Dave said, though, you know, you start speaking about paranormal phenomena or, you know, things that we talk about on the show. People who have a ghost story. Everybody has some kind of ghost story. Certainly my family has its fair share, which I might share with you in the future. But there are a lot of stories out there. And most people ignore it or incorporate it into their daily life and don't think about it any further, because it is simply too far out of the experiential frames of references that people have built for themselves, right? Meaning, ooh, it's too hard, plus people think I'm crazy, so I don't want to talk about it. Bye-bye, see you later. And you know what? I'll never talk about it again. Never. Don't mention my name, by the way. Not my name, okay? Call me Joe Bloggs. That's it. No, Joe Bloggs is what I call myself everywhere. No, call me something else. Call me John. There you go. So people have a real problem with admitting to these things that they have actually happened to them. So it's not as unusual a phenomenon as you might think. Do you know what I mean? It's not as unusual a phenomenon as you think. It happens to a lot more people. In fact, it probably happened to you. Speak about it. Let's open this can of worms. Let's see what it is.
Yes, absolutely. Look, Meckie and I would like to thank everyone for listening and certainly taking the time. Thank you, Jer for giving us the extra 20 minutes. And we hope you're ready. We're going to pass the show on to you. If you could roll the end music possibly again, if you wish to, that could be an easy transition for you. Thank you like I said, so much for episode 222. Next week 223, and hopefully we've got the interview with the gentleman who is speaking at Paracon. It'll be a nice segue between this show and the next.
It'd be awesome. Thanks, guys.
Any chance you got the music going, Jer, or we'll just hang up? Thanks. That's Shiny Side Out. Take care, everyone.